Hi, and welcome to the latest podcast episode. I am here today with representatives from ICGL and a team from the University of Portsmouth. And today we're going to talk about university clearing. So we're going to really talk about how technology can make that whole process a little less stressful for everybody and a little easier for everybody, including the team at the university, but also the students. So why don't you introduce yourself first and we'll go around the table.
So I'm Elena and I am a collaboration practice lead.
Excellent.
Yes, I'm Jeanette Connolly and I work in networks and security and support the collaboration side for C&C.
Perfect.
I'm Jeanette Eriksson. I'm the head of admissions at the University of Portsmouth.
So you feel that pain of the clearing period?
I do indeed.
Quite acutely.
And I did that for many years. Then I stopped.
Yeah.
And then I'm back.
And now you're back.
It wasn't drawn me back.
You could not get enough.
I just love it. Indeed.
Excellent.
And we sense the irony here. No, not joking.
That's quite interesting, the fact that you left the clearing process and then came back, because obviously student communication preferences change over time. What have you seen in that shift and how has that impacted the university?
I think there's been a big shift just in the last few years. And now applicants want more options. They're not as confident on the phones, but that's still a high demand in those phone calls. So we need to make sure that we support that, as well as having all the other channels, which is an online form, there's web chat, there's quick, everything has to be quick as well. So it's just delegating and supporting the customers to make sure that we pick everything up and they have their decisions quickly. So
over a very short, intense period of time.
It is. I think it's the flexibility. So I don't think you can say one channel or the other. I think it's the flexibility of the options. And voice isn't going away. I think because it's such an important time of year for them. It's such an important topic. Sometimes actually being able to speak to someone and have the immediate response is what they're looking for. But at the same time, if it's very busy and you're waiting in that queue, having the option to go, well, actually, I'm going to try WhatsApp. I'm going to try an online form. And it's the flexibility. And then if all of it is coming back at the end of the day.
Do you think that they actually get some reassurance by actually talking to a human?
Yeah.
As well as all of those various options that we've mentioned, that you can actually go down a channel and then even opt out and speak to a human.
Absolutely.
And I think as much as you try and publish all the information necessary, whether it's to do with accommodation, to do with the course, it's a big life decision. So a lot of them do want to talk through their options, and the parents, they want to also be there and they can't do that just via an online form. So we need to cater for all types of customers in this high-pressured environment, indeed.
So that must unlock some common technical bottlenecks during that process. Have you got some examples of things that you've
Capacity.
seen?
I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to come back to capacity. But you've got to balance. So if you think about the fact that it's 2 days, or Saturday, sort of 2.5 days potentially, but it's Thursday morning, which is going to be when you hit your max sort of the volume of calls or digital channel communication, all of that is hitting at once. And you've got to balance it with covering and that capacity at that, but also being sort of flexible enough through the next 2 days, because you don't want to throw everything into it, but then have people that are sitting there sort of doing nothing effectively for the next 2 days. But from the technical perspective, if you're talking voice calls, well, how many concurrent calls can you cater for? But you've got to balance it with how many people you've got sitting answering those calls, because you don't want to put, 5 people and it's hundreds of calls coming in at once, because then the queues are very long.
Yeah.
So it's finding the right balance across now multiple channels rather than just voice.
And we don't like to queue either. We like the thought of if a student's going to call through, that they're going to be answered as quick as possible, and to the best of our abilities, and having those people available in whatever function.
And I was going to say, it's almost like you do want to queue because you want to be inundated. You want to be popular. And therefore, we've obviously carefully considered all the scripts and making sure that while someone is waiting, they get all the information they need so they stay on the line. And also, just to add what Elena was just saying, that you base your capacity needed on perhaps the previous year, but every year is different. So you never know what's going to happen. And I'd say last year, we had a prime example of that, where we planned for our phones capacity based on the previous year in the morning. And of course, that was a year where we just inundated first thing. And we, and you couldn't have planned for it because you couldn't have had enough people on the phone. So it's just making sure that then you have the messaging whilst they're waiting is really supportive and welcoming and keeping them on the line, or they can go off and do their online forms. So we know contingency, other options.
So that's an interesting question about benchmarking, isn't it? And tracking, like what to measure. So what should you measure during, so obviously you build in that capacity and contingency, but what should universities be measuring and looking at to prepare effectively?
For clearing in general?
Yeah.
Well, technology plays almost a small part of that because actually, yes, you've got the clearing process, but actually it's much bigger than that. You don't just stop and start at the clearing. It's a much longer journey that you look at as a university from start to finish. So I think, from technology perspective is reporting on your core volumes, how quickly they've answered it, but also that's just a tiny part that your team will then look at.
It's like clearing is everything. It sounds all dramatic, but it's everything from the pre-period where people start looking at coming to you and how you publish yourself and measuring that through marketing campaigns to
and like
performance
visits to the website and things like that.
Absolutely. To calls, how quickly they were answered, see where you can improve perhaps your delegating, the messaging, the form, and looking at the data as well that you captured, because if you don't capture the right data, you're going to have issues later down the line.
But it's looking at the student's journey past that.
Yeah.
It's been offered as one thing, but then also have they registered? Have they been admitted? Have they then gone through, what is their journey through the university past the clearing process? Because actually it's that full
cycle.
That's such an important point, because I think when you get to clearing, there's a lot of focus on bumps on seats. I've worked at many universities and I've been a consultant and I've seen it. You're just planning on the numbers, but you need to look beyond when the register and how they're going to achieve. So it's the retention, progression, achievement. So that's something that's super important, I think, for universities, but doesn't always get the full focus.
Yeah,
think about that later.
Yeah, because I suppose it's balancing that longer term with the sort of very short term tactical things that technology needs to support. But then how can it then support that whole journey?
Yeah.
And for you particularly, in terms of the University of Portsmouth, how have you really seen that technology benefit clearing, but also that journey beyond?
I think in some ways it's having the flexibility.
Yeah.
Sort of since moving on to the platform that we're on now, I mean, being able to move people about. You don't actually have to move physically your location. Being able to log in and log out of different teams and processing calls and in multiple different ways. It just makes things so much easier.
And that's something I remember when I joined. That was something we talked about really early, where I don't think the university had done that. They hadn't set everything up to allow the flexibility.
I don't think it was actually there. It wasn't something that we were able to do.
But it proved that we had after the first year, we did a lot of work on setting up functionality so that we could quickly move with, perhaps if there was a queue in a certain area or you have staff that have been trained on certain tasks, to switch them to allow for the flexibility you just mentioned in order to support the business process. So that's something that was a huge change actually for us.
Yeah, it was really good.
Made us incredibly efficient.
Yeah. So a sort of use case of that, because my youngest is in her first year of university. So I've been through the process on one side. So I guess that comes in handy if you're doing tours around the campus, or, in one area gets a bit busier than another area, you can move people around more easily. Is that an example of?
I was probably more referring to the technical or phone tasks. It's often making there's the UCAS processing, because clearing is obviously at that point is a recommended offer, if you wish, but it's only when the formal processes happen, there's a formal offer. So there's a lot of things going on at the same time. There's sort of non-standard offer making, of academics we liaise with, etc. So I think it's just having the option of moving people across the tasks required for the clearing offer making process.
I see.
There is obviously
people are responsible for different parts of that process.
And also over that 3-day period, obviously the key element of the morning, the morning of.
Is that in capitals?
Absolutely,
a rocking morning.
Is the whole focus in a particular area.
Yeah.
So then once sort of the afternoon comes, the calls drop down in a certain area, but they increase in others.
Right.
So being able to flex people about to join different teams, they can actually progress that applicant in a different way.
Yeah.
Which is great for applicants, isn't it? Because then it doesn't matter who you end up speaking to; they can take you down the path that you need to go down to get your questions answered or to get things progressed.
That requires obviously training.
Yes.
There's a lot of
I
don't think people realize how much work that goes into preparing the temps that you use in clearing or the internal staff, because there's more and more pressure on using internal staff to support the clearing event. But in order for someone to just rock up, if you wish, and start taking those calls, and they need to have all the guidance, all the information, all the systems need to be updated. So it's making sure that, yes, you can create flexibility in a phone system and shift roles around, but people need to be able to do those jobs. And so there's a lot of prep, and we've created a lot of online training that people have modules they can read, which we can reuse every year, but it's
and resource planning must be huge.
Resource planning
is physically put people to help them support that process.
Yeah.
And what do you see from a technology side? Obviously, you're more involved in that side around supporting all of these things. Where are some of the challenges?
Well, it's providing the tools, I suppose. So on the day itself, it's the real-time information that the staff have access to, so that they can see if there are bottlenecks. They can see the volumes of calls, and then they can have whatever processes need to change and to react to it. And then again, with the discussions that we have earlier on, so we tend to get involved quite earlier on in this process. We don't just come and support on the clearing day. We start conversations all year round, pretty much.
Are you very good friends?
We'll see each other a lot, surprisingly enough.
But you then sort of having to understand, well, if the university needs to react to some of these challenges, how are they going to want to react? Therefore, what flexibility do we need to build into the platform that will allow them to do that? So whether it's people moving from one queue to another, or one team to another, or actually being able to just increase the number of people answering calls, obviously some of it has to be set up physically, but it's the flexibility in the background and be able to anticipate what might come up or what might need to be done, I think.
Yeah.
And with that, I think also translating what the business, say admissions, what we need. So we might express it in a certain way. Well, we need the flexibility for this and this to happen. And then someone like you have then come in, or you, Jeanette, come in and said, well, we can do this. This is how we can set up the groups. This is how we can create the scripts. This is what we can. So it's working with us to make sure that we.
And it's always an ongoing process.
Yeah.
You know, sort of, because new things come along, and and how, and sort of having the imagination to think, okay, how can that improve? What Jeanette needs to achieve, and what's good for the university.
Well, and looking at it holistically as well, because there's obviously lots of different teams involved with the process. So making sure that you don't put something in place over here that might impact someone over there negatively, and looking at the student experience, because I think sometimes, it's like in retail, you can get very caught up in what you're doing for the good of the business, but then the consumer gets left behind. And I think
that's the key thing, I think, is, the student is the key.
They should be the main focus. But there's, we have clearing planning groups running from February every year. Jokingly, we see Elena all year, but it is 6 months prep. And after every clearing period, we have wash-up meetings with every area of the university to sort of work out what was good and what can we improve? And then there's a bunch of enhancements planned for the following year. We had a 14-page report this year, just on the feedback to make sure that we continuously evolve and become better.
Yeah. And contingency points, I'm guessing, a big risk mitigation, I can imagine.
There's always a report on that. Yes, all prepared. Luckily, we don't need to use it. But it's, very important.
Yeah.
That's the planning stage.
Yes.
Yeah. The backup plans, the recovery plans, the testing, the capacity. And all of that happens up front.
Absolutely. So how do you manage that balance between, because obviously security is an issue as well, there's that ever-present element to all of this as well. So how do you balance all those different things from a practical point of view? So the needs of the technology versus the needs of the team and the needs of the students. Where are some of the challenges there?
That's a very good question. That's a very good question. I suppose the way to look at it perhaps is you don't implement technology for technology's sake.
Yeah.
So you look at the business case, you look at the use case, and you also have to look at it from two perspectives. So student as a customer, but also the internal staff. You got to remember that, sort of, as Jeanette mentioned, it's going to be a combination of temp and internal university staff that might not be dealing with this very often. Yeah. So you've got to look at, if they're coming in for the day, it has to be easy. They have to have everything to hand. But of course, security is going to be key. So yes, we're moving to cloud-based solutions, but you have to think about where that data is. Is it encrypted? Is it secure on transit? Is it secure in the cloud? Where is it stored? But that comes into almost at sort of the front end when you're looking at the solution and you decided on where you're going to go forward as you progress from everything being on-prem and everything being there. Yeah. And obviously University of Portsmouth has worked with us and we have progressed to the cloud. But those decisions are made early.
Yeah.
I think with new technology coming on board, you have to look at, and I'm going to mention the word AI because everyone talks about AI at the moment.
Of course.
But you have to think about practicalities and what is it going to give you that's beneficial rather than going, let's turn on AI. Let's use it.
But why do we need it?
It's why. Why do you need it? Because then you look at specific use cases and you look at them sort of externally and you look at them internally. I think that's where we're going.
That's where we're going.
That's where we're going with conversations, and it's looking at them individually because you have to look at it practically for specific reasons.
Yeah, because and it's a good point. It ties us into sort of the final area that we were going to focus on, which is about emerging technology and how that can transform the clearing process, particularly in coming years. How do you sort of see that shaping up?
AI definitely will be utilizing. It's appearing in admissions more and more now.
Yeah. And how is that used? It can be used.
I think we can use it in lots of ways, and I think it can be a total win-win. That you can use AI perhaps for the clearing staff. That you can have systems that are perhaps assisting with answering questions. So instead of having databases with information, you can use
just query.
AI. Exactly. You can also have a chat a chat function that could perhaps provide more assistance on more generic questions that would then free up the time
scale.
for the experienced staff to answer the more complicated things. So you get better service as a customer, you get the answers you need, and then you have freed up staff at the university who can answer. Yeah. So I think definitely that you can obviously incorporate more things, more AI-linked information into the application form, perhaps, that would just capture data or answer questions as someone goes along, I think.
And also with the reporting side of things, sort of from the AI aspect, being able to look at the content of the conversation and actually react to that content
contextually
and always improve the the resourcing of that content.
Yeah, so
the next caller coming
getting insights of common questions that perhaps you've not uncovered before because they're asked in different ways.
Yeah,
there's so many nuances, aren't there?
Yeah, so many.
Yeah,
I think it absolutely will be beneficial.
Yeah.
But I think that's the key to it. You're not looking to replace the people at the end of the day. The AI is there to assist or improve or sort of create efficiency or free up staff to answer those more important, more advanced, more complex or questions where actually the person needs to be part of the conversation rather than just a knowledge base that sits in the back.
Yeah, exactly. So it's applying that technology where it can offer the most value to you and the students, I'm guessing.
Yeah. As long as it obviously ticks all the boxes for the customer, so they don't feel they're being, bogged off for an AI tool, but that there's always the option to then speak to somebody
And I guess that's how you actually deliver that to the staff members too, how you sell it to them, that they're not being replaced.
Yeah.
They are the key, they are the key people.
And getting them to focus on the high value stuff that they can offer, which is, making students feel comfortable about coming to the university, knowing it's the right place, and feeding into that long-term element that we were talking about at the beginning.
I think in some ways you can look at it that, the student will actually see us as evolving too.
Yeah.
We're moving along with, with technology. We're not stuck in the past.
Yeah.
Sort of looking at old things.
Well, especially because they're all used to that always on technology. They're used to being able to, like you said, interact through different channels. We always call it the Amazon experience, just get what I want on my phone when I want it.
Absolutely.
And it can be quite a blocker when you can't get that. Yeah. Because when I went with my daughter, we went up to an unnamed university that has multiple campuses in one city, and we had no idea where to go, and it was so frustrating. But it could be quite a big blocker, can't it?
Yeah,
if it doesn't work.
Yeah, and I was going to say it the same way. You could argue that the person you speak to at the university, that is the university. That is the voice. That's the tone. So that's why customer service is so important. But what Jeanette just said. Just realised we say Jeanette all the time. That the system that they use is also a reflection on the university. That is the university. How forward-thinking are we? How efficient are we with the forms? So absolutely, it's a reflection on the university. You need to show you're moving with the times, because everything else will be moving with the times in the customer head. Yeah.
Well, exactly. And it would also impact the person that works at the university in terms of their temperament throughout the process. So if they're happy and relaxed because the technology is helping them, then that comes across too, doesn't it? It's sort of quite multifaceted.
Exactly, because they're not answering the same questions, the same simple questions that they know could be answered somewhere else. They are reserved for this. Actually, this is a discussion that I am sort of providing a proper answer to somebody who needs that help. It's the value as well of you as the person answering those, rather than this is the address, this is the phone number.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Well, thank you for all being here today. I think this has been really interesting. Are there any final thoughts that you'd want to leave with the audience for us to close on?
Well, from technology, planning from partner perspective, getting involved early, not last minute. I mean, I'd like to think that we're very much involved in this process with the university from very early on, but it also kind of enables us to set up the system and a system with technology in such a way that will fit their use cases, and we can understand that better, as well as then be with them following the process for the next year. So I think it's that ongoing cycle.
Yeah, that iterative sort of constant improvement that you were talking about.
Well. It does. Yeah. It does work well in getting that conversation going early.
Yeah.
And I think from the business side, from the admissions side, organizing it for months and months, sometimes it can feel quite exhausting, but I'm always reminded every year that it's a really exciting project, actually. And when you get to it, and that results day and everything working and everything you worked for, when that all happens,
and that energy,
you feel the energy. You look forward to it, actually, in the end. Like it's just. I'm actually just reminding myself it's a really exciting thing. It's almost like just a day or 2 days or 3 days.
It's like a wedding,
but it's like something big you plan for, and when it works well, which it has done, really lucky at University of Portsmouth. We've had really successful clearing periods, and you're boosted for weeks after that, actually. You're tired, but you're really boosted. So it
certainly makes all the testing worthwhile.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, exactly. You just got to keep the faith.
Yeah, and develop some really good working relationships with wonderful people. Yeah.
Makes a big difference, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah, and it's that true partnership, isn't it? It's that sense of partnership, which is...
You're in the war. This war.
Yeah.
Maybe cut that out. You're in the trenches.
In the trenches.
You're in the trenches. Yeah. But it's you're working together for this common
goal.
Big goal.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all very much. That's been really interesting. And
thank you.
Thank you.